13,000 years ago, every avocado on Earth was about to disappear. The giant animals that spread their seeds across 2 continents had just gone extinct, and without them, the avocado had no way to reproduce on its own. Its pit was too large for any surviving animal to swallow. Its fruit would simply fall to the ground, rot beneath the parent tree, and die in the shade. A single species of fruit, one that had thrived for millions of years, was suddenly stranded in an evolutionary dead end. However, something saved it. And the story of what that something was, and everything that happened after, is one of the strangest survival tales in the history of food. To understand how the avocado almost vanished, you have to go back a very long time. We are talking about the Cenozoic era, tens of millions of years before anything resembling a human being walked the earth. The wild avocado tree, Persea americana, first appeared in what is now south-central Mexico. Archaeologists and botanists have traced the earliest avocado remains to somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 BC. But the fruit itself is much, much older than human agriculture. The avocado was not designed for people. It was designed for monsters. During the Pleistocene epoch, the Americas were home to creatures most people today could barely imagine. We are talking about Megatherium, the giant ground sloth, which weighed 4 tons and stood as tall as a modern giraffe. There were Gomphothers, which were proto-elephants with 4 sets of tusks, the lower pair shaped like enormous spatulas, and there was Glyptodon, an armadillo the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. These animals, collectively called megafauna because they weighed more than 100 pounds each, roamed from what is now Oregon all the way down to the tip of South America, and they loved avocados. The arrangement worked perfectly for millions of years. A Megatherium or a Lestodon, which was another type of ground sloth that weighed 2 to 4 tons, would come across an avocado tree, eat the fruit whole, pit and all, and wander off. The animal got a healthy, fat-filled meal. And the avocado got something even more important. It got transportation. The pit would pass through the animal's digestive system over the course of days, sometimes weeks. And by the time the animal deposited it somewhere else, in a pile of nutrient-rich dung, the seed was ready to sprout. Far from the parent tree. No competition for light, no competition for water. Fresh soil. The avocado had essentially hired the largest animals on the planet to be its gardening crew. This is what biologists call coevolution. The avocado and the megafauna shaped each other over millions of years. The avocado developed a large, calorie-dense fruit packed with fat and calories to attract big animals. The pit grew enormous because only an enormous gut could carry it far enough to matter. The animals, in turn, developed digestive systems that could handle swallowing a pit the size of a golf ball without any trouble. You can still see the evidence of this ancient relationship today. The avocado pit is wildly oversized compared to the edible flesh around it. That ratio makes no sense for a fruit trying to attract modern animals. But it makes perfect sense if the target customer weighed 4 tons and had a throat the diameter of a drain pipe. The avocado is, in a very real way, a fruit designed for a world that no longer exists. And the whole system hummed along beautifully for millions of years. But then, roughly 13,000 years ago, the world changed. The Pleistocene extinction wiped out somewhere around 80% of the megafauna on Earth. The causes are still debated. Some scientists point to rapid climate fluctuations at the end of the Ice Age. Others argue that human hunters played a major role, arriving in the Americas and overhunting animals that had never learned to fear a creature standing on 2 legs. Whatever the combination, the result was devastating. The giant ground sloths vanished. The Gomphothers vanished, Glyptodon vanished, and the avocado was left alone. Think about what that means for a tree. The avocado had spent millions of years evolving a fruit, specifically designed to be eaten by animals that no longer existed. No surviving animal in the Americas was large enough to swallow the pit whole and carry it to a new location. Jaguars were not interested. Deer could not manage it. The biggest creatures left on the landscape were a fraction of the size of what the avocado needed. Without seed dispersal, avocado seeds just fell to the ground directly beneath the mother tree. They sat there in the shade, they rotted, or they tried to germinate and found themselves competing with their own parent tree for sunlight and water, a competition they almost always lost. As Connie Barlow, the author of The Ghosts of Evolution, put it, without large mammals like the ground sloth, the avocado seeds would rot where they fell and have to compete with the parent tree for light and growth. The avocado was trapped, an evolutionary orphan, designed for a world that no longer existed. But the avocado did not go extinct. And this is the part of the story that still amazes researchers, because the thing that saved the avocado was us. Humans had been living alongside the megafauna for thousands of years before the big animals disappeared. And somewhere along the way, early humans in Mesoamerica figured out that the creamy green fruit growing on those trees in the valleys of what is now Mexico and Central America was worth eating. They could not swallow the pit the way a ground sloth did, but they did not need to. They could plant the seeds themselves. And they did. The wild avocados they were eating were nothing like the ones you see at the grocery store today, by the way. Wild avocados had massive pits with only a thin layer of edible flesh surrounding them. Think of it as mostly seed with a smear of green around the outside. Over centuries of selective cultivation, humans gradually bred the avocado to produce more flesh and, in some varieties, a smaller pit relative to the fruit. The avocado you slice onto your toast is the product of thousands of years of human selection. Recent research from UC Santa Barbara, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2025, revealed something that surprised even the researchers. At a site called El Gigante Rock Shelter in western Honduras, archaeologists found desiccated and carbonized avocado remains, showing that people in Central America were tending wild avocados as far back as 11,000 years ago. And here is the part that caught everyone off guard. The people living at El Gigante had already domesticated avocados by the time maize arrived in the region. Avocados came before corn. That is how important this fruit was to ancient Mesoamerican life. Over the next several thousand years, the avocado became woven into the cultures of every major civilization that grew up across Mexico and Central America. The Olmec, one of the earliest known Mesoamerican civilizations, grew domesticated avocado trees as far back as 500 BC. So did the Maya, who valued the fruit so highly that they gave it a place in their calendar. And so did the Aztecs, who may have had the most interesting relationship with the fruit of all. The Aztecs called the avocado Ahuacatl. That word translates, and there is really no delicate way to say this, to testicle. The name referred to the shape of the fruit hanging in pairs from the tree, and it led the Aztecs to believe the avocado was a powerful aphrodisiac. They believed it promoted fertility for both men and women. Whether the belief came first and the name followed, or the name came first and the belief followed, nobody knows for certain, but the connection stuck. The avocado was more than food to these civilizations. It was sacred. In the ancient Maya calendar, the 14th month, called Canc-in, is represented by a glyph for the avocado. The Aztecs believed the fruit provided strength to whoever consumed it. Archaeologists in Peru have found domesticated avocado seeds buried alongside Incan mummies dating back to 750 BC. The Inca did not even discover the avocado on their own. They found it when they conquered a northern province called Palta around 1450 to 1475. They liked it so much they named the fruit palta, a word still used for avocado in parts of South America today. By the time the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the early 1500s, the avocado had already spread from Mexico through Central America and into parts of South America. It had been cultivated for thousands of years. It was a staple food, and the Spanish, to their credit, recognized a good thing when they tasted it, but they could not pronounce its name. Ahuacatl was too much for Spanish tongues, so they simplified it to aguacate. From there, the word traveled across the Atlantic and through several more languages before eventually landing on the English word we use today. The first European to describe the avocado in writing was Martin Fernandez de Enciso, who mentioned it in a book published in 1519 just 2 years before Hernan Cortés and his soldiers marched into the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. Another Spanish priest, named Bernabé Cobo, became the first European to describe the 3 main types of avocados: the Guatemalan, the Mexican, and the West Indian, in 1653. Over a century later, in 1696, an Irish naturalist named Sir Hans Sloane is credited with coining the English word avocado in a catalogue of Jamaican plants. Before Sloane, the English had been calling it the avocado pear, which was a reasonable enough name. But as the decades passed, casual English speakers slurred avocado pear into alligator pear. And try selling someone a fruit called an alligator pear. It is not the easiest pitch. George Washington himself encountered avocados during a visit to Barbados in 1751. He wrote about eating what he called agovago pears and noted that they were a popular food among the locals. But the avocado remained a tropical curiosity for most Americans for another century. The first successful introduction of avocados to the United States happened in 1871 when a judge named R.B. Ord planted avocado trees from Mexico in Santa Barbara, California. The climate in Southern California turned out to be nearly perfect for avocados, and by the early 1900s, a small number of growers were beginning to see commercial potential in the fruit. But avocados were still a niche product, something you might find at a specialty market in Los Angeles, but almost nowhere else. Most Americans had never seen one, let alone tasted one. If you lived east of the Rocky Mountains, the avocado might as well have been a fruit from another planet. And the variety that dominated at the time, a cultivar called the fuerte, which means strong in Spanish, had smooth, thin green skin that looked beautiful on the tree, but bruised easily during shipping and turned brown and mushy by the time it arrived anywhere far from California. Everything was about to change because of a postman. In the late 1920s, a mail carrier named Rudolph Hass bought some avocado seedlings from a man named A.R. Rideout in Whittier, California. Rideout was an avocado pioneer who collected seeds from every source he could find, including, according to some accounts, the discarded food bins of local restaurants. Hass planted the seedlings on his small property in La Habra Heights, California, with plans to graft them into a proven variety called Lion. One of the seedlings refused to cooperate. Every graft attempt failed. The tree would not accept the Lion buds. It just kept growing on its own, doing its own thing, producing no fruit. Hass got so frustrated that he seriously considered cutting it down. But his children talked him out of it. And that decision, a father listening to his kids, may be the single most important moment in the history of the modern avocado. Because eventually, that stubborn tree did bear fruit. And when the Hass children tasted it, they liked it far more than anything else growing in the yard. The fruit had a rich, nutty, slightly oily flavor that was completely different from the fuerte variety everyone else was growing. The only problem was that it looked, frankly, ugly. While the fuerte was smooth and bright green, the Hass avocado had thick, pebbly, dark skin that turned almost black when ripe. Nobody thought it would sell, but Rudolph Hass started selling them anyway. First to his co-workers at the post office, who liked them enough to keep coming back. Then to a grocery store called the Model Grocery Store in Pasadena, where, adjusted for inflation, a single Hass avocado sold for the equivalent of about $14 today. People kept buying them. And then came the discovery that changed the entire industry. A man named Carter from an avocado company encouraged Hass to try a shipping test. Hass mailed a box of his avocados from California to Chicago and back. When the box returned, the avocados were still solid. They were still good. This was a revelation, because the fuerte variety, with its thin, delicate skin, arrived bruised and overripe after long shipments. The Hass avocado's thick, pebbly skin, the exact feature that made it look unappealing, turned out to be its superpower. It could survive the journey. In 1935, Hass did something that had never been done before. He patented his avocado tree. Plant patent number 139. It was the first patent ever granted on a tree in the United States. Hass signed an agreement with a Whittier nurseryman named Harold Brokaw to grow and promote the variety. Brokaw would handle the nursery trees, and Hass would receive 25% of the proceeds. But there was a problem that nobody had anticipated. The patent was nearly impossible to enforce. Growers would buy a single tree from Brokaw, then graft their entire groves using budwood from that one tree. They essentially pirated the Hass avocado. For creating what would become the most popular avocado variety on the planet, Rudolph Hass earned a total of less than $5,000 in royalties over the entire life of his patent. Hass died in 1952, the same year his patent expired, but his avocado outlived him by decades and eventually conquered the world. The original mother tree, the one his children saved from the axe, lived on at the old Hass property in La Habra Heights until 2002, when it finally succumbed to root rot at the age of 76. By then, every single Hass avocado tree on Earth could trace its genetic lineage back to that one stubborn seedling. There are now an estimated 10 million Hass avocado trees worldwide. The Hass variety accounts for about 80% of all avocados eaten on the planet and generates more than $1 billion in revenue in the United States alone. But even after the Hass avocado proved itself, the fruit still faced a massive obstacle in the American market. And that obstacle was the federal government. In 1914, the United States Department of Agriculture banned imports of Mexican avocados. The official reason was pest control. Seed weevils had been found in Mexican orchards, and American agricultural officials decided the safest approach was to ban Mexican avocados entirely. Whether the ban was genuinely about bugs, or whether it was also protecting California growers from competition, is a debate that has never fully been settled. Either way, the ban held for the better part of a century. And as long as it was in place, Southern California produced about 90% of the avocados Americans ate. The fruit remained expensive, regional, and relatively unknown outside the Southwest. Then came NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, signed in 1994, changed the math. The United States wanted to sell corn and other agricultural goods to Mexico. Mexico pushed back and demanded that its avocados be allowed into the American market in return. The deal was struck. Starting in 1997, the USDA began allowing Mexican Hass avocado imports into a limited number of northeastern and midwestern states, but only during winter months, under the theory that cold weather would keep any potential pests from reaching the groves in California. California growers fought the decision hard. They had enjoyed a near monopoly on the American avocado market for decades, and they knew what would happen when Mexican avocados, grown cheaply at massive scale, started flooding in. But trade is trade, and the restrictions loosened gradually over the next 10 years. Mexican avocados were not allowed into all 50 states until 2007, which, as one journalist pointed out, means avocados went nationwide the same year as the iPhone. And just like the iPhone, once people had access, there was no going back. But trade policy alone does not explain how the avocado went from an obscure regional fruit to one of the most consumed foods in America. That took marketing, and some of the most creative food marketing the country has ever seen. In 1992, the California Avocado Commission hired a PR firm called Hill and Knowlton to do something ambitious. They wanted to tie avocados to the biggest advertising event in America, the Super Bowl. Hill and Knowlton created what they called the Guacamole Bowl. They recruited NFL players and their families to submit guacamole recipes. They showed up at NFL events and handed out free guacamole to everyone, from fans to reporters. The idea was simple. Americans already liked chips. If you could get them to dip those chips into guacamole while watching football, you could build a habit that lasted. It worked beyond anything anyone expected. Over the next 2 decades, the connection between guacamole and the Super Bowl became so deeply embedded in American culture that it is hard to imagine the big game without it. The PR campaign did not just sell avocados. It created a ritual. It made guacamole as much a part of Super Bowl Sunday as the halftime show. In 2015, Avocados from Mexico became the first fresh produce brand in history to buy a Super Bowl commercial. Americans now consume roughly 54 million avocados during Super Bowl weekend alone. In the 2 weeks before the game, a truckload of avocados crosses the Mexican border into the United States every 6 minutes. That is not an exaggeration. That is the actual shipping data, and the numbers tell a story that would have seemed completely absurd just 1 generation ago. A fruit that most Americans had never tasted in the 1980s became one of the most consumed foods in the country within 30 years. Per capita avocado consumption in the United States went from 2 pounds per person in 2001 to nearly 8 pounds per person by 2018. Overall, consumption increased by more than 600% between 1989 and 2020. The global avocado market now exceeds $20 billion. Mexico alone exports roughly $3 billion worth of avocados each year, and about 80% of that goes to the United States. They call avocados green gold in Michoacan, the Mexican state where the vast majority of the country's export crop is grown. And the name fits perfectly because the profits involved are absolutely enormous. But enormous profits attract more than just farmers. This is the part of the avocado story that most people do not hear about, and it is the part that matters most right now. Drug cartels and organized crime groups have maintained a presence in Michoacan and the neighboring state of Jalisco for more than a decade. And as the avocado industry boomed, these groups saw an opportunity. They moved in with extortion rackets, demanding protection money from growers and packers. They took ownership stakes in avocado businesses. In some areas, they controlled the entire supply chain, from the orchard to the packing house. A 2024 report by Climate Rights International called Unholy Guacamole documented how cartel involvement has created a climate of fear in avocado-growing regions, where anyone who pushes back against deforestation or water theft risks threats, violence, or worse. And the environmental damage is staggering. Satellite imagery and government data show that more than 70,000 acres of forest in Michoacan and Jalisco have been cleared for avocado orchards in the last decade alone, much of it illegally. About a quarter of avocado production in Michoacan comes from illegally deforested land. The trees that once held hillsides together and replenished underground water supplies have been replaced by row after row of avocado trees that drink water at a rate the landscape was never built to sustain. In Michoacan, avocado farming consumes as much as 75,000 gallons of water per acre, drying up springs and rivers that local communities depend on. The trees that once covered these hillsides did more than look pretty. They held soil in place, kept rainwater from running off too quickly, and replenished the underground aquifers that local communities drew their drinking water from. Removing them has had cascading effects. Over the course of a single decade, deforestation can reduce a community's access to clean drinking water by as much as the equivalent of a 9% decrease in rainfall. And in a region already facing drought, that is not a statistic, that is a crisis. In February of 2022, the situation boiled over in a way the world could not ignore. The United States temporarily suspended all avocado imports from Mexico after a USDA plant safety inspector working in Uruapan, Michoacan, received a threatening message on his official phone. The suspension came on the eve of the Super Bowl, the biggest sales day of the year. It lasted only 8 days, but the message was clear. The avocado trade, worth almost $3 billion in annual exports, had become tangled up in something far darker than agriculture. And this brings the story full circle in a way that is almost too strange to be true. 13,000 years ago, the avocado nearly went extinct because the giant animals it depended on disappeared from the earth. Humans stepped in and saved it. We cultivated it. We bred it. We turned an obscure tropical fruit with a giant pit and barely any flesh into a creamy, delicious staple that people on every continent now eat in hundreds of different ways. We named it after a body part, argued about it in trade negotiations, patented it, marketed it during football games, and turned it into a $20 billion global industry. But in doing so, we also created something the avocado never had to deal with before. We created demand so massive that forests are being raised to meet it, rivers are being drained to irrigate it, and criminal organizations have moved in to profit from it. The fruit that was saved by human hands is now being strained by human appetites. The avocado's survival has always depended on a partnership, first with giant ground sloths that carried its seeds across 2 continents for millions of years, then with ancient Mesoamerican farmers who saw something worth cultivating in the valleys of Mexico and Honduras, then with a California postman whose kids convinced him not to cut down a weird-looking tree, and now with consumers, growers, and governments on every continent, because the choices we collectively make about where our avocados come from, how they are grown, and what we are willing to tolerate in the supply chain will determine whether the next chapter of this story is one worth telling. The avocado has survived ice ages, the extinction of its primary partner species, centuries of obscurity, an 83-year import ban, and a name that literally translates to testicle. It has been through worse than this, but it has never faced anything quite like the pressure of 8 billion people discovering that they all want one at the same time. That mother tree in La Habra Heights, the one Rudolph Hass almost destroyed, produced the genetic blueprint for 80% of the avocados on Earth. It stood in a quiet suburban yard for 76 years. No sign out front, no tourists, just a tree doing what avocado trees have done for millions of years, making fruit and hoping something would carry the seeds forward. The tree is gone now, but its children are everywhere. 10 million of them, spread across 6 continents, all descended from a single stubborn seedling that refused to be grafted into something it was not. Every avocado you have ever eaten exists because of a chain of small, unlikely decisions stretching back thousands of years. A ground sloth chose that tree. A farmer planted that seed. A kid said, "Do not cut it down." And somewhere along the way, the most improbable fruit on the planet just kept surviving. If this story surprised you, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us what part you did not see coming. And if you want more stories like this, tap the like button so we know to keep making them.